So, welcome back to the podcast. I'm here in Hobart, Tasmania, with Aleks Crossan, artist. Welcome, Aleks.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
So, we're trying something new here, new audio setup. So, you notice I've not got the headphones on as usual, but yeah, we've got the lav mics. So we're changing things up here.
Yep. Little fluffy.
Yeah, and a little bit more relaxed, hopefully. Although perhaps I'm not, but Aleks certainly is on the couch.
I was thinking, like, with the headphones, I was like, oh, how's that going to feel? So I'm pretty happy with not having
the
headphones.
Good. And such a wonderful space. You've given me a tour of the facility.
I love giving tours.
Yeah, it's so
like
cool
every time
here.
I give a tour, I kind of it's like then the people are so impressed, and then from their reactions, it kind of makes me feel even better about what I'm doing and like my practice, and it makes me feel even more not accomplished, but like just like, yeah, this is what I'm doing. And so it's like this kind of cycle or circle of manifesting what I want to do, but it's like it's just all like, do you know what I mean? It just kind of
I do
because I get to say it over and over again. You know, some people, they write the things in the journal or like, you know, oh, this is what I'm trying to manifest. But every time I give somebody a tour, I just like I'm like, oh, this is fucking amazing. Like, oh yeah, we have this and that, and then I just kind of get to feel it again and enjoy it again. And so by doing that so often, I just kind of expand myself into the future version of myself that I'm going to be. Does that make sense?
It does to me. It does to me. Yeah. I've just been listening to Seth Godin's The Practice, as I was saying. So it's just what Seth's been telling me to do as well.
Yeah, there you go.
But the thing is coming to it. You have this studio that's in an old brewery, and there are other studios around, and you're part of. We were just talking about this.
So you first thing was a brewery, the one building, but then mainly it was Apple packing sheds and Apple processing facilities. So most of
But the wonderful thing is you rent this space, as do other artists and makers.
Yeah.
And so you have this sort of microcosm of community. Yeah. But then you're part of this wider community of the Hobart artist scene, is a very naive way of saying it, I suppose. But then the Tasmanian art scene, so it's, for what you've just described there, giving me the tour, I get a sense of your world that you're in here, but how it's connected to the outside, but through what you tell me. So how did you get here?
We lived in Signet, and I had a little studio that was just kind of like part of the living room, but it was like a little extra half room. But I was working on my desk a lot, so that was when I started my art practice, which was about 3 years ago. So I have to just back up. I've been in the arts all my life, but I've moved into visual art 3 years ago. So, you know, I had a dance company. I've been on stage. I've done voiceover work for cartoons. I've composed music. So like lots of artistic creating going on. But so 3 years ago, I started, and I didn't have a lot of space. So I did small things. I did like just kind of lines. Like line drawings and watercolor and ink things. And then when we sold our house and we started renting closer to town, I didn't have a studio, and I was like, I just really need space, because I had started working with acrylics, but just like, you know, on a chair, and I realized that I don't like to do small things, that I need more space. And I emailed like the mayor and this person and that person. I was like, what about artists in Hobart? You know, we need space. There's no, like, I was looking on on Gumtree, on Facebook Marketplaces, just looking for spaces. And then there are a few like studio collaborations, but they're like, oh, we have a wait list. And like, it's like a club you can't get into. It's like all these people. I'm like, I don't know any of these people. It's like, if you're not in the club, you're not going to get in there. Like, you just got to be friends with somebody. So I'm like, okay, that's not going to work out for me. And then, so there are a few places, but they just didn't have any space. I applied to Salamanca Arts Center, and I was like, ooh, that's going to be so cool. Like, I'm going to get a studio up there. I'm prepared to pay a lot. They're really expensive. It's going to be other artists there. I'm going to be in this beautiful building. It's such a cool building, right? And like Salamanca. And I didn't get it. I was like, fuck. And so I got really frustrated, and I told you before that my son, Merlin, he's 22, gave me my own advice, and he's like, Mom, you just have to forget about it. Like, just let it go. Don't try. Just get settled in the garage. I was like, oh, okay, moving around boxes, like pouting, kind of like, setting my stuff up, and then did that for like 2 evenings. And then I had it done, and I had started, kind of painting, but not with like excitement. I was kind of pouty, a bit like. And then the next day, I got an email from Jude, who has her studio in my studio in the corner. That her studio partner was moving out in this amazing place, and I just knew her from having contact with her for an application that I had made once, because she worked with public art installations in Hobart. And so I had emailed her months ago and said, like, well, if you hear anything, let me know. And she got back to me and said that her studio partner was moving out, and she started describing the property, and I got halfway through the email. It was like 7:30 in the morning. I didn't really know her. I called her. I was like, I want to come. And I came, and I've been here since May last year, and it's ridiculous. Yeah. We've got a sauna, man. Like, it's just like, what?
Well, but I suppose more important, I don't know. My interpretation is you have wonderful wall space.
Yep.
So you can make that big art that you really want to make.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is something that, I do feel it's such a privilege to be invited to artist studios. So thank you. But also, what we don't ever talk about is how hard it is to get those studio spaces as well.
It's really hard, yeah. But I also think, so like what really interests me in creating art, like myself, what interests me is everything that happens in here when you're creating, or, in life. I'm really interested in how we think about things, how we make decisions, and what happens while I'm painting, the whole process that we go through. Likewise with finding a studio, it's really hard, but like what I got was 100 times more amazing than what I thought I could get.
Yeah.
And I think, so like, I'm really glad I didn't get Salamanca, because this is what, like, I didn't even know this existed, right? So if I would have been like, oh, let's write down, what I want. I want to have a studio with da-da-da-da-da. I would have limited the possibility of what was happening, because I got given, the fucking win of the lottery for me.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that this was possible. So I think just trusting that, just kind of, how should I explain it? So it's like, I'm going this path, and then I think I'm going this way, and then the universe goes like, I'm like, okay, I thought I was going this way, but I guess we're going this way. And then just like being with open eyes and, the feelers out, like, okay, well, I know something's going to happen. What is it? But you don't know what. But if you can, when I say you, I mean, if we can just go with it and be like, okay, well, I thought this was going to happen, but I guess it's not, and not hang on to it, but just like kind of go with the flow, then stuff like this happens. So yes, it is really hard to find a studio. I never thought this was possible, but I think there's more of this stuff around if we just let go of like, this is what I need, or like, just like, okay, whatever, like, I'm just going to try to be in the space where I can kind of equal the energy. Oh, it sounds so the same kind of level of what I'm trying to get.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. You used the word manifest before when you were talking about showing me and others around and how you manifest your future artistic self.
Yeah.
And so I guess, this space became your space through a series of events. And as you say, if you'd taken another turn sooner, this wouldn't have manifest. So you're here now, and you're making the most of it by the look of it. Yeah. So I usually start by asking, where did it all begin? You've already told us that, so 3 years as a visual artist, but a lifetime in the arts. And I was just about to dive into contemporary art, your paintings here on the wall, but I think that needs to come later. So I guess the question is, rather than where did it all begin, have you always felt that you're an artist?
I've always been really creative, and always I felt like I was bigger, like bigger than a lot of people around me, like just more ideas or more energy or more like just kind of, and also too much often. Like,
Yeah.
you're too much, you're too loud, you're too whatever. Now I'm 48, I'm like, I don't fucking care anymore. It's like, you know? But so like when I was little, I wanted to be a clown.
Yeah.
When I was 3. And like we had the Charlie Chaplin VHS like box set. Oh my God, like just, I watched those forwards and backwards. I know all the songs, I know all the music. So like Charlie Chaplin, we had Laurel and Hardy, we had just like all of those, you know, that kind of. So I watched that. I went to the circus, we would go to the circus. I wanted to be in the circus and I wanted to be a clown.
Yeah.
And now I remember when I was 11 or 12, so I did go to like theater classes and I took ballet. Ballet was a little bit too regimented for me, but I wanted to go to this kids circus that like every summer holidays they had 5 weeks of intense like practice, and then they would tour Switzerland, which is where we lived, where I grew up, and do the shows, and it was like proper circus. And kids who go through that, like, you know, they go into circus. And my parents, they weren't together; they were split. And I remember I drove with my mom in the train to Hobart, which is a place, and my dad picked me up there and we went into a cafe. I remember this, and we were sitting there, and you know, it was like the handover, and I remember I'd asked them if I could do it, and they said no.
Wow.
And because it was too much, it would have been too far to drive, and my mom was working, and I mean, I understand it, but it was like, oh, but I want to be a clown. And so I remember that was devastating for me. That was a really big disappointment. But I continued. I did theater classes, and we had like once a year we would have a big performance, you know, and so it was just really fulfilling. And our teacher, her name was Rosemarie Metzentin. You could not do this today, but we loved her. She had 2 groups of 100 kids that had a performance that they made. So this was like a whole year of rehearsals and stuff. And when we were on stage practicing and doing the lead up to the performance, you know, you have 30 kids on stage and they're not listening. And she had these heavy shoes. This is the 80s, okay? So like these, you know, kind of like a little bit higher shoes. And they were like heavy, proper shoes, not like today. And she would stand on stage and she would say in Swiss German, "Wann het ruhig sind, fliegt den Schuhe." So if you're not quiet, my shoe's gonna fly. And she would take off her shoe and she would throw it across. And we were like, and we loved it. Try that today. It would be like,
I had a biology teacher, Mr. Bolt.
Ah, yeah? Was he like that?
It was the blackboard eraser.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
And you remember it, right? It's
yeah,
like
I've still got the scars.
No, really?
No, anyway.
Did you throw it at
No, it's not. This isn't about me. This is about you, Alex.
So theater, you know, that was just a really great time. And then I went to the States to boarding school, grade 9, 10, 11, 12, and got into the theater there. So it's always been like theater, performance, singing. I was in the choir. I was in the chamber singers, photography. In the photo lab, I can still smell the chemicals. I loved it, like, you know, developing everything. I'm a photographer. Just like that. All of those, like all the artistic areas. But I didn't get into painting or drawing. That didn't really, at that time, that wasn't something that I wanted to get into. And then I feel like looking back, it was kind of more of an external thing, like also needing external validation, like the art forms that I did. So like being on stage and you have an audience, you know, or like singing, you have an audience, like a lot of it being about maybe like not low self-esteem, but like insecurity kind of, and then being able to get that from the reaction from the audience and like, I was good, that was good, you know, instead of being able to give that to yourself.
Yep.
To get that from the people. So I feel like that's why I was more in those kind of arts, like more the performing arts, which I loved, but it's an interesting choice to look back now. And then before I had kids, I started painting and I wanted to go into art school, but I didn't get in. This was after I did some drugs and went to therapy for 18 months, like at a place where you live and you work and you have group sessions. And so I wanted to go into art school and I didn't get in. And I then decided to go to dance school where I did choreography and also, again, performing arts. But I loved it, and I had my own dance company. And then kind of when the kids came along, I stopped doing all that and focused more on music with my husband. And then I got back into theater again, and then COVID happened, and then I was like, you know what? I think I want to come more back to me.
Yeah.
So, just drawing this arch of, expressing myself, but getting feedback from people. And then now being older, I'm 48 now, not really needing that anymore, and just being able to be creative because I want to be creative and not needing anything from anybody.
Right.
So not needing, oh my God, that was so good, or even if it wasn't good, like just having this like external validation.
Sure.
And so I've really been enjoying. And the other thing I have to say is the way I created in my earlier life was always a lot of inspiration from pain or like from experiences that might not be the nicest experiences.
Yeah.
Doing drugs or relationship issues and having like really codependent relationships, just kind of heavier stuff. And that was really like, wow, just like, writing songs and, lyrics and creating dance pieces and choreographies and like having so much to like, I'm really glad I had all those experiences because it gave me like 10 years of material, just like, and I never thought that it is possible to create art from a positive, holistic place. That might sound really ridiculous, but I did not know that that was possible. I thought it had to be, like, also, music, when you listen to music, like a lot of music is like, it's just like, it's coming from pain, right?
Well, look, if Chris Martin hadn't had so many breakups in his life, Coldplay would be rubbish.
Yeah, exactly. See, it's breakups or, death.
Sorry, Chris.
Or whatever. And
it
comes from like kind of a darkness, right?
Yeah.
And so only now since, actually at the beginning when I started painting with acrylics, I listened to, because I am a Radiohead fan and a Tom York fan. I'm going to see Tom York in a month.
Excellent.
In Sydney. I'm going to see him in real life. Listening to Radiohead like over and over again and kind of just like really dark songs and painting and kind of still being in that thing of like, that's where I used to be, like that's how you create. And I mean, if you look at my art now, it's not very dark.
No,
right?
no.
It's like, somehow then there was this change where I didn't have to listen to music to give me the thing to create anymore. Like it was like I had to listen to the music and the music was like, it was here and then it just went here without coming through my head. And then at some point I was listening to different music and then I didn't have to listen to music. And then what I never thought I could do was to listen to a podcast while I'm painting because I needed the music to give me the thing that I needed to create.
Yeah.
And so slowly over the last year it's changed and I can get the thing from myself, which is like, whoa, that's so cool. And it's not a dark thing. It's just like, it's just me. I'm listening to myself and I'm like, what? But like, it's just taking the thing, that's me, that makes me, and then putting that out there and knowing that it's big and loud, which was the name of my last exhibition, Loud. And like not having to make an excuse for yourself. Yeah. That was a really long answer to your question.
No, but you've taken us on a journey and I think what I'm taking away, Aleks, is very much we're talking about external validation. So you would make you would perform for that validation externally. But what you've just told us about is how you would take inspiration externally inwards. So you're bringing all this dark stuff in and then projecting that out into the world. And you're no longer doing that.
No.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and I think it has to do with age.
Yep.
Very much. Although I do look at young people today, also my son, my oldest son who's 22, and my two younger kids, 18 and 16, and I'm like, wow, like I think today's young people are different than when we were young. I don't know if it's got to do with the internet, all the information, but like they are just so much more positive. and like they know all this stuff, like, you know, I just stuff that I feel like I had to figure out so many things.
But when they were at school,
Yeah.
they were doing mindfulness in the morning. When we were at their age at school, teachers were throwing blackboard erasers at us.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And if
But we
not that-
turned out okay.
Yeah, but the more fundamentally is something we were talking about before, which was we were talking about different academic disciplines, but how knowledge has moved on, how we're actually much more in touch with ourselves, and how things like vulnerability, it's okay to be vulnerable now, whereas perhaps 20 years ago, people like you and me would not, we had to find other ways to cope with things rather than be able to just talk about it.
Yeah. And I think like a lot of things, if I would have known them when I was 16 or 18, I'm just like, oh,
Yeah.
It's so much easier. So I think it has to do with age. Me also, I'm going to be 50 soon. God. Not caring. I mean, this has to do with going into perimenopause, hormones changing, and actually not needing to, not having the urge to have to like tend to everybody, but like it's actually a hormonal thing where the hormones change, where that's why all these women in their 50s, people are like, they're so like arrogant and egotistical. It's actually just the hormones that change, and we're like, no, I don't feel like doing that. Like, I'd love to, but I don't want to.
Yeah.
This is and so like just doing what I feel is right for me, and just doing what I want and not what I think I need to do to get your approval or, that. And if I would have learned, if somebody would have sat me down, I mean, obviously you're not going to do that when you're 18, but just be like, hey, it's okay to say no. Like saying no, I only learned that like 8 or 9 years ago. Like I can say no. What the fuck? So there was this theater project that I was going to do, and it was going to be paid and full-time and everything for a few weeks. And then COVID happened, and then they canceled it. And then they were going to pick it up again, but it was going to be profit share. It was going to be a different director. It was just all going to be different weekend rehearsals and stuff. And I didn't want to do it, but I didn't even, like, and then I thought about it, and I was like, I can tell them no. Like, I would have never done that years ago. I would have just said yes, because, like, it's this really good company. Of course I got to say yes, even though I'd rather spend time going skateboarding with my kids or whatever. But then I said no, and I was like, and I just like, I grew, and I was like, what else can I say no to? This is so cool. And I was like, why didn't anybody teach me to say no when I was 18? Like, I think it's so great to say no to things, because saying no to somebody else means saying yes to yourself. Even just that sentence, like saying no, it doesn't mean, it's not, like you're saying yes to yourself by saying no to some, like just this. And I can see that my kids are learning that now.
Yeah.
Like they're 16, 18, and 22. I'm like, whoa.
So how do you say yes to yourself here in the studio?
In the studio or in like the arts practice generally?
Well, yeah. Like, I suppose what I'm trying to segue to is to what is your practice now as a visual artist? Because we're talking about things that are much more fundamental than the act of picking up a paintbrush. But that what you've just been talking about, Aleks, actually enables you to pick up the paintbrush and then to do something with the paintbrush that no one else does. And so I guess I asked a very general question. It's not generic, a general question there, just to see where we would go with it. But I think more specifically, it's okay. So 3 years ago you decided you had a smaller studio. You had that constrained your practice. You wanted to grow your practice. You now have this space. You have these huge canvases on the wall, and so you're saying yes to yourself, giving yourself the time to make, to create, to. So, what does that look like on a daily basis? Are you in here every day?
I come in here like maybe 3 or 4 times a week. It depends on what I'm doing. Like I just did a commission for the Clarence Jazz Festival, so I was in here for 4 weeks, quite intensively. I think what this space enables me to do is do what I do in life, but also do it with art. So like trying to go with the flow, do what feels good, don't do what doesn't feel good, do what comes easy, and do what is fun. Like just, if I'm having a good time, then I have to contradict myself, because within painting a painting, there's always the really shit phase where it's like there's just this, you know, the thing, there's this, like there was a meme where there's like in the books, they do this, you do a project and it's like, oh my God, this is gonna be so great, it's amazing, you know, it goes up and then it goes down, what the fuck am I doing? Oh my God, I hate this, I'm never gonna do this again. Oh, it's not that bad, oh, I love it, right? That does happen.
Yep.
But I feel like coming in here, and especially after having so much external stuff in my life and needing people around me and having lots of people and doing lots of things outside of me, I know many people talk about how isolating the art practice is, and you know, you're not around a lot of people, but like I love it. I'm in here by myself, but I have all these people outside. I can go make a coffee in the tin kitchen. I can chat to people, but I actually really love just spending time with myself and challenging myself and kind of watching how I think when I'm creating something. So I kind of sometimes envy people who are like, they've got all the Post-its on their wall and they're like, they have a plan and they're like studying something. They're like, oh, I'm gonna do this project, and like they they know what they're doing. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I never know what I'm doing. And they're like, ooh, like they have a concept, you know? Like there's a concept. And they have all the Post-its, and like my studio neighbor, she's amazing. I'm like, oh, she's always like working out stuff. And I'm just like, okay, you know, I just go. And which is great, because that's how I am. But sometimes I do envy that. I'm like, oh, it's just so, because I love lists, really. I love to make lists and stuff, but I can't do it in my art because it just comes from here. I cannot plan it.
No.
I'm not answering your question.
No, I can really relate to what you're saying. You said something earlier about how just follow, you know, you're heading down this path and the universe will take you down another.
Yeah.
My photography is exactly the same. I can't plan a shoot.
Yep.
I can't pre-visualize anything.
Yeah.
I put myself in a place, usually on a street somewhere, and I just start following my gut.
Yeah.
And the minute my head comes into it, I stop, and my body wants to go in this direction, so I will follow it, and that's
so you follow the body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what you're telling me is you know, I asked you what does it look like on a daily basis, but actually what you're describing more as your whole way of being as an artist.
Because it's kind of the same.
It's not just here in this studio.
Yeah.
It's not just when you pick up a paintbrush.
Yeah.
It's if you follow your gut, if you follow a feeling, it's going to lead somewhere, and you're comfortable with that.
Yeah, but have not always been. So this
No.
is the discussion we had before. You know, that's kind of in the recent years, in my 40s thing. And I think that's really what interests me about creating art, and also talking to other artists. You know, a lot of them are much younger, you know, like in their mid-late 20s, people who I know here in Hobart. And sometimes I feel like, ooh, is what I'm saying sounding a bit like, I don't want to sound like, I don't know, what's the word? I feel like people already know this, but then I realize when I talk about this kind of stuff that the younger people don't know this. And what I mean is talking about like what you were saying before, like this, having the vulnerability or being your authentic self, or not having to like just do what you want to do, and like don't listen to the other people. And like just this way of living that I'm like, oh, they're actually glad to hear me say that. Like, because I mean it in a good way, you know, but I just think, well, they all know this. I'm talking about stuff that everybody knows, but no, apparently not everybody, like, and I've only just learned this, but I'm really passionate about just this subject and this theme of like, how can I be my true version of myself, which is scary, and how can I show that in my art? Because that is the only way I think that art is gonna, like, that people are gonna connect with the art, when they see like, like it's come from here and it's gone on there. And then people see that, they see it and they're like, oh, I like that, because that person is in touch with themselves, and I wanna be in touch with myself, because that's what everybody wants, right? We all wanna be happy with who we are. And I feel like the art that we connect with comes from people who, in some way or another, deal with this subject, right? Like, how can we connect to this deep part within us in different ways, you know? but I think that's like the essence of creating art is like, how can and I don't think about how can I put on canvas what I'm feeling, but I just try to not think and paint. And even when I hate it, which happens in every painting at some point, I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? I can't believe this is so bad. And then just keep going. And then in the end, it's like, and it's just that whole thing is like parallel to like, you know, personal development. I don't know what the word would be.
But I think, I mean, what you talked about, you know, I would call it life experience. So the benefit of your life experiences bring you to this moment where you're actually able to push through that dip in the graph. You know, that point where you really hate what you're doing, but you'll keep pushing through. There's something that you've experienced in your life, whatever sphere, that says that you know it's going to be okay if I keep going.
Yeah.
And I think that not everybody is able to do that. I know, you know, with my photography, I never showed my photography for years.
Wow.
It's only very recently that it's actually gone out into the world.
And what changed for you to make you to
really
show it?
Get in touch with who Tim is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating.
What were the blockages?
Yeah.
What was stopping me? And so perhaps when you are, you know, when you're hating it, you're in that moment. Do you know what keeps you going?
Sometimes I'm like, how can I not remember that this happens every fucking time? Because I should just get to that point and be like, yeah, I know this happens every time. You know, I should really, but it's hard to believe that every time it's like a huge frustration and it's like, you know, like, and every time it happens again. And you'd think that after that happening so many times, I don't know what makes me keep going is that I know I'm going to get out the other end, but it's not fun. Mm-hmm. It's not fun. And I think that's also what you're saying, like, it's important for people generally in life just to learn that. I feel like today that's not something that's learned as much anymore because everything's so easy and there's all this like, you know, we don't want to create any conflicts or problems with anybody, but like learning that you're going to come out the other end and you're not going to die. Like, you know, in difficult situations, like that's what makes you, then getting through that. Or like there was this great example of my daughter when she was younger and her tooth was coming out. So great. I was just watching this situation unfold. I'm like, oh my God, this is like the best life lesson. She came downstairs and I was on the couch and she's like, and, you know, she couldn't get the tooth out and she stomped back upstairs and I could hear her in front of the mirror and she's like, and she came back downstairs and I was just sitting there and she knew it was because she had lost a tooth before. She knew it was going to end. She knew it was going to come out. It's not going to last forever. She knew it was shit, but she knew she had, like, there was nothing else for her to do but to go through it, right? And so I was watching her up and down, I'm like, I'm being frustrated, and going up and wiggling again, and she didn't ask me for help, you know, which is great. Like, I'm just like, yes, like, you can do it, yeah, you know, just try not to, you know, be too involved. And then she got it out, and she was like, you know, it's this, like, achievement, right? And I was like, this is it. This is what happens in the painting.
Yes.
This is in life. This is like, we all need to know that that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to be, you're not going to die. Like, you're feeling this shit. It's really bad, but if you know that there's an end, I know that the painting in the end, I know that feeling of suddenly the painting looks at me and it's like, ta-da. And you're like, oh my God, that's like, now it's working. So like, if we all can just remember that, you know, and I feel like if kids, they don't get enough opportunities today because everything gets fixed for them, or parents want to fix things for the kids. I'm generalizing, but I just feel like it's more difficult today to teach this to kids. But if, like, that's just what we need to learn. And if we have that, then it doesn't matter what comes, because we know I can get through this. It's tough, it's shit, but I'm going to come out the other end and something's going to have changed. And I'm going to have a painting, or I'm going to have this experience, or I'm going to have a new friend, or I'm going to, you know, whatever. I'm going to have learned how to deal with this situation. And that's so cool. Yeah.
I mean, for me, I mean, you said, you know, it took you a long time before you could say no. Me the same. But I think for me, some of those things you've just been talking about, it took me many years to figure that out. And it was through photography that I was able to find some self-expression and start to understand a little bit more about myself. And I suppose that's what art can do. And a couple of things you've said there about, different generations, and I think, like, I watch so much YouTube, and because I'm just fascinated in it as a medium, and how it influences contemporary culture as a sociologist.
Yeah.
Which we were talking about before. But my point is that there's this thing called the YouTube New Wave. Or
What's that?
New Wave YouTube. It is predominantly young people who are incredibly expressive emotionally and engage us in their stories on a very, very deep level, and make beautiful cinematic videos in which they are able to do the sorts of things that you have been telling us about.
Wow.
And so the interesting thing for me is when you've got people in their late teens and their early 20s who are using a digital medium artistically to do that stuff, that gives me some hope for the world, because they're getting through they're getting through those hurdles that stopped me, that blocked me for 40 years.
But that's what I was saying before, exactly what you're saying. Like, I look at my kids and I look at my 22-year-old, I'm like, wow, you're so healthy, and like, you're being objectively thinking about things, and you're like making good decisions, and you're like expressing yourself and having healthy relationships. Like, where was I when I was 22?
Yeah.
It's exactly what you're saying. It's amazing how the young people today like are so much further than we were.
Yeah.
I think there's other things that are missing.
Yeah, I agree.
But it's always like that. Like, I think about, my childhood or when my kids were young and how it's changed now just with phones and everything. But there's so many positives. Like, through Instagram, I'm a bit addicted to Instagram, I have to say. I've met so many cool artists. It has been, 20 years ago, it would not have been possible for me to create art like this 20 years ago, because now it's like you can go on the internet. I didn't study art. There was a sentence somewhere where it was talking about an artist, and it said in the artist bio, it said, so-and-so is unencumbered by a something art degree or whatever. And I was like, oh, I really like that word, like unencumbered by a professional art degree. I was like, I want to steal that, but I can't, because it's too fancy, the word. But isn't that so cool? Like,
yes.
I feel like 20 years ago, or I don't know how many years ago, you had to go to art school. You had to kind of go down this path to become an artist. And now you can just kind of figure it out, which also is probably part of my personality, how I do things. But like, you can just go on the internet and you can do like a course if you want to. You don't have to go to uni. You can just pick and choose what you want. Like, so I think we talked about this before we started recording, like people who want to get into the arts, I'm like, just fucking do it. Like, you don't have to go to uni. You don't have to do a course. You just buy some fucking pencils or whatever. Like, just do the thing. Then use stuff that's laying around. Like, just do it. Just do it. And you can get inspiration from people on Instagram, on YouTube. You can message artists. Like, I've messaged people. I'm like, oh my God, they're never going to answer. And I'm like, asking stuff. They're answering me. I'm like, I've found out so many things through asking people. Like, ask people. They will help you. Mm-hmm. Mostly people are good people, and they, like, people who are, established, they will help you. They will give you information. And I think now is the time to start being an artist if you want to be. It's so much easier than 20 years ago or 10 years ago.
Yes.
Like, you don't have to go to uni. You don't.
No. Well, just yesterday I was watching a podcast. It was on YouTube. Rick Rubin.
Ah, yeah. Oh.
And Rick was talking about working with LL Cool J and the Beasties, and basically how he was in his dorm room at Columbia University, and they were coming to him, and he didn't know the right way of doing things, so they just made it up as they went along, and that's what created new sound. That's where the innovations came.
Not knowing what you're doing.
Yeah, if you know the rules, you've got to be really bold and brave to break those
Yes.
rules. But if you don't know what the rules are,
Exactly.
you're just going to go, you're going to have a free reign.
Exactly. Yeah. And my middle child, Jasper, he's 18, he said a few weeks ago, I was like, I'm so impressed that he said that. It made me so happy to hear him say that. He said, you know, I think I'm, what did he say? Because my kids all make music and stuff. And so he's recording songs and plays the guitar in his room. And then I don't remember what the discussion was, but he says, you know, I think it's good that I don't really know how to play guitar because it makes me a better guitar player. Like I'm paraphrasing, but I was like, yes, like just, yes, he got the idea of it's good to not know what you're doing. That's what they do in companies, right? Sometimes like people who are like, you have all these people who know what they're doing, but they'll bring somebody in who doesn't know about that because they're gonna have an idea that they weren't thinking about. And they're like, ooh, because they don't know what the fuck they're doing. So I say this all the time. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I'm just doing something and I'm having fun. But I love it. I love not knowing what I'm doing because I don't. I didn't go to art school. I don't know anything about, I don't know the famous artists. You can put me in a museum, I'll be like, I don't know who that's by or that's by. I mean, I know the Mona Lisa, but like I don't know the famous artists. I don't know terminology for stuff. I don't know the things.
Okay, so yeah, before, just so I was switching on the cameras, I was saying to you, look, I don't know what contemporary art is, and you said to me, well, I don't either. But I don't know if you were just being facetious. But so I have been wanting to ask you about, what is contemporary art, but I'm not going to ask you that question.
I don't ask me. I know as much as you do.
Because a better question is okay, if you don't know what you're doing, and you've only been a visual artist for 3 years, because this
only really for like a year and a half. Like
there you go.
Before that was like just kind of.
But then you are getting commissioned to make art, as you've told us. How does this happen? Because there are going to be people just like me, listening right now, watching, who are going to be asking, well, how does that happen? If I can just, if I don't need to go to art school, if I can just make, how do I even begin to live the artist life?
The answer is not in how to create art. The answer, as we've noticed in this whole conversation, is I'm talking more about this.
Yeah.
The answer, I think, is to be yourself 100%.
Yeah.
So like do what you want to do. And that, if you always come back to that, if you always like every time you do something is like, does this work for me? Like saying no to things, like not selling yourself out, like, oh, I have this job that I could do some design for something, I don't know, and it's in like watercolor. I don't like watercolors. Oh, but I'm gonna do it because it's paid well. No, like do the thing that feels good for you and be your authentic self. I think that just like it repels the people who like, there's a lot of people who don't like me. They're like, you're too much, you're too big. I'm like, fine, I don't need everybody to like me. But then there's the people who are like, I love hanging out with you. Like, I love your art and they really like it because it's authentic.
Yeah.
So I think being your authentic self, it sounds so cheesy, but being your authentic self and having that in every area of your life, like have it in your art, do what you want to do, what you have fun doing. If it's not fun, don't do it. If you're painting something and within the painting, as we talked about before, you have those struggles, but generally, like I have fun all the time. Like I just have a fucking blast. I have a party. It's fun. I'm like, it's great. I don't want to do something where I have to suffer.
No.
So I think if somebody wants to create something, if you keep coming back to that point of, is this me? Even if it's scary, like it will be scary. And I think the younger you are, the more scary it will be, as like we didn't know how to do that when we were younger. And also, like, if something's scary, that's a sign that it's maybe something you should do. Like, if it's the scary, not like it's not good for me scary, but scary, ooh, can I do this? I'd like to do it, but I don't think I can. That's like when you should say yes and like challenge yourself. So I think challenging yourself to do the things that scare you, like jazz commission, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Yep. Like just saying yes to things and then you figure it out later.
Yeah.
It's like, because you can't see how you're going to get there. But if you just start going, when you're like, then you can see it because you're closer, but you just got to get started.
Yeah.
So I think just just doing the things and keep readjusting to, does this work for me? Is it fun for me? And is it me? Or am I creating something or being something or acting or talking in a way that is to impress other people or to something out here?
Yeah.
It just has to be in here.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think then all of the art, regardless of what it is, or if it's photography or whatever, that will all just like fall into place as long as it comes from the right place. And so I've just been applying for stuff, and like I got the commission. I've just, what I wanted to say was, I apply for stuff and then I don't get a lot of stuff. Like I get a lot of emails like, sorry, no. But to me, it's like, that was exposure. Somebody saw my paintings, some great jury people, and if they see my stuff somewhere else and somewhere else, they'd be like, oh yeah, she might be the right person for that. So even if I get what's it called when they say no?
Rejection.
A rejection. I don't care, because it's like, somebody saw my stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I think if you can just think things like that, and not need to get into things, but just put it out there where it feels right and just go for it. And then stuff will just happen, and to not judge yourself, like not just like, oh, I didn't get into that. I really wanted that. Well, you didn't get that because maybe it wasn't the right time, or it wasn't supposed to be. You didn't not get it because you were supposed to get it. You didn't get it because you weren't supposed to get it because something else is coming.
Yeah. And it's and so you take your ego out of that process, because when I have been rejected as an academic, academics get rejected all the time. You submit papers to journals.
Oh yeah, and then
the feedback, it can be they can be brutal.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Or they don't look at it because it's not something that's like, falls in line with something that has nothing to do with you.
But those who are most successful are those who just let it go.
Yeah.
Work on it, because no matter how brutal the feedback is, they do want you to publish it. You send it back and you just keep going, which is what you just described. And I think that is a life lesson no matter what profession you're in. But I do think in the arts it can be especially brutal. Maggie talked about this. So Maggie Jeffries a few weeks ago, and I did want to come back to Maggie because I wouldn't be sitting here right now if it hadn't have been for you listening to Maggie's podcast.
Yeah.
And you know Maggie.
Yep.
Tell us about that connection there then.
Oh, I think in Hobart, it's like, it's such a great art scene. There's this whole group of them who were at uni together, kind of with Maggie, and I think you're going to interview George and all those people. I don't know them very well, but just going to exhibitions and like seeing people over again. And Maggie came to visit here at the studio. I'm really like, I want to see everybody's studio. I want somebody to just do like video, like what you do, but like also with like, just all the artists here in Tassie, like just like, what materials do you use? What are the pencils? What do you like? I want to see what you use. So I like to just do like little studio visits, or I'll just ask people. Like, I mean, I don't know them, but I'm just like, hey, can I come to your studio?
That's great.
And
advice.
I think I just through Instagram, and then, well, I think George was the first person who, when I started painting, I saw his stuff and I was like, like I really, really, really like his stuff. And then I just started messaging him on Instagram, and then you kind of get to know each other a little bit, and just like see each other at galleries, or kind of support each other.
Because that's the other side of you can have a practice in your own studio or in a space all on your own and keep making, and you can keep submitting and keep getting rejected. But if you don't have that community around you, if you don't have those connections where you actually can realise that everyone else is going through the same stuff, and you're there for each other, and actually you are interested in each other's work, and you celebrate with each other.
I think it's I think all of because the people who've been to uni together, they have that. I wouldn't consider myself like I know people, and I'm like in touch with people, but it's not like, I think for the people who have been at uni together, they have a really nice, like they've been together for a few years, and they have this, like what Maggie was talking about in her interview, where they have like crit sessions and you look at each other's work. And so like I don't really do that with people. I just have more like, just let's have a catch up and talk about things, but not like the art, kind of looking at the art and then kind of giving each other feedback. And it's interesting because I was thinking about this the other day when I was listening to your interview with Maggie, how she said that was such an important part. And I agree, but I don't. Like, I think it depends on the person.
Yeah.
Because, for example, I didn't go through art, uni. I think the community part is really important. That's true. But for me, I feel like if people would give me feedback on my work, it would make me behave differently when I'm creating after that.
Yeah, I gotcha.
So I really don't want anybody to tell me anything about my art until it's in the gallery and then it's done. But it will influence me. Like, even if I know I don't want to do what you like I'm not going to want to do something that you love, I feel like even that, like, I think I really, in order for me to do what's really truly me, I have to not have anybody tell me what they think, or have somebody, the contrast, or, I don't know, this, this top part, like what Maggie was saying, the eye goes here first and here, that's interesting to hear once I've created something, like, this is how my eye moves through the painting. I don't want to hear that while I'm creating. It's going to make me do something different. It's going to make me want to make it nice for you or to adjust to that. But really, then I'm not going to find where I'm going. And I really, really, really want to go where I'm going. I don't want to go where other people want me to go, because that's what's going to make me, not better than others. That's not what I'm trying to say. But like, just be really authentic. And what's going to draw people to my art is if it's me.
Yeah.
Right? And then people are going to hate it and people are going to love it. And I don't care. Because the people who hate it, they might not want to connect with that part of themselves, and that's fine. But I'm not going to find that if, like, me personally, if I have anybody telling me, like, doing a crit, so it's interesting.
I really relate to this. Going back
Do you have that with your photography?
Well, no, so I, like you, I keep that out of my photography. As an academic, what you get is you get these reviews back, and they say, I don't like that sentence. Can you say this instead? I'm like, hang on a minute.
Oh, wow.
No, it's not your that. There are reviewers who are very good, who will say, well, actually, my eye is drawn to this section of the paper, and so, perhaps you could, try to develop that a little bit more. That's good. That's a good crit. But I don't like this. Could you do it this way? That's not a great crit.
I don't do commissions.
Okay.
But like, people talk about commissions, like the jazz commission that I'm doing. I made 4 paintings for them, and they could choose one. Yeah. When they asked me if I would do for the artwork for the jazz festival, I was like, yeah, but I can't do it if you know what you want me to do. Like, if you're like, we want a painting that's this and this color, and it kind of has this in it, and it kind of has that in it, like, I can't do it. You've touched on so many.
These interviews, they blow me away every time. I come in, the less research I do in advance, the better. The interview. Honestly, I came here knowing very little about your work, only what I'd seen on Instagram, a couple of conversations with yourself. We haven't talked about painting. We've talked about being an artist, what it is to be an artist, and how that relates to your life. And I think that there are so many life lessons that we can all take away. I am wrapping up, but it just feels like we've covered all the bases.
Well, we've covered what, like, I'm interested in. I don't, that's the stuff that I'm really passionate about. Is what we've been talking about.
I suppose the only point I didn't make then was we've talked about so many things, but the generosity of that community that you are part of. You don't feel like you're right on the inside of it, but you're part of something. Yeah. And being part of something, you don't want feedback while you're in progress, but what you do want is as you said, you want to understand how they do it, and that's going to help you understand how you do it, and whether that's just as a counterpoint, or whether it's actually as a way to inform your practice and riff off of each other. I don't know.
I think it's a great community we have down here. I don't know all the people, but like the people that I've connected with, and I find that's very Tasmanian anyway. Like, people are so open to share. Like, I would just ask people, like, can I come visit your studio? And they'll be like, yeah. And I get to ask them questions and just, like, look at their art and Like everybody's so open and generous with their information, because that's what I like about the visual arts. It's like people aren't like protective about their information. It's not like, well, I can't tell you this, otherwise you're going to steal my strategy or my way of doing things. It's like, because it's not possible. So people just share information. They're not you know, kind of like this about it. But it's like, yeah, I use this, but like, oh, what do you know? It's just like so generous with their information, with how they do things, you know, connections. Or like when I had my solo exhibition in April at the Social Gallery in Salamanca, there was a guy and somebody was like, oh, ask him about how he did his press kit. And he's like, oh, I'll send you what I did, and then you can look at, you know, and you can kind of take. I was like, that would not happen in a different world. Like, you know, he sent me his email that he sent out, and he's like, oh yeah, and you know, go look up this and this, and gave me some tips. And I was like, this is amazing. So I think that kind of everybody just kind of joins in on that. So everybody is in this bubble or in this mood of like helping each other out. So then, yeah, it just kind of, everybody does it with everybody. I mean, everybody I've met till now has just always been super nice and helpful. So I think that really helps, yeah.
Well, you've been incredibly generous with your time and energy, Aleks.
It's been so much fun.
Yeah,
great,
good. I'm glad.
Sometimes I'm like, keep talking about stuff that's in here and not that. But I think, but that's okay.
No, this is really powerful stuff. You know, I do this podcast. Firstly, thanks to the generosity of every artist I meet. And then also the generosity of connecting me with other artists, as Maggie has done with you. But I think, look, there are so many, you know, I do this because I want to learn. I want to learn how I can actually feel confident in calling myself an artist.
After all these interviews, you can know all the things.
Well,
you know all the things.
But there are so many other people out there who want to learn as well. So look, thank you for this. How can people find you? What is coming up? Where can they find your work?
So on Instagram, I'm Aleks with a K-S, A-L-E-K-S, Aleks Crossan on Instagram, and my website is alekscrossan.com. Yes, I just got a new sexy website that my husband made for me. I have coming up a residency next week, which is going to be great fun, working on something for the Jazz Festival. I have created some works for the Clarence Jazz Festival, which is going to be in February. So all of the advertisement for that is going to have my artwork in it in some way. I don't know yet how. I'm excited to see that. And I'm going to have a solo exhibition in Devonport Regional Art Gallery, which I haven't been to yet. I'm going to go visit them in 2 weeks. I'm going to have a solo exhibition there from February 1st till mid-March. And a couple other things lined up. It's just flowing. It's like if you just stick to the thing and just keep doing what's good, it just, you know, and then it's like, I couldn't have made this happen. It's just like, oh, here you go. Oh, here you go. It's like it just happens. It's easy, you know?
Just focus on the work.
Yeah, just do the fun thing. Just to have fun. Have fun. I think that's it. Like just enjoy what you're doing, and then and be patient, and then things will just fall in your lap, I think.
You heard it here first, everyone. Aleks, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It's been great.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Connect, Curate, Create. I hope you found inspiration and insights that you can apply to your own creative work. For highlights and links, check out the show notes, and be sure to follow us on your favourite podcast player so you never miss an episode. Tune in next time as I continue to explore life and work in the arts.